All right, everybody, my name is Gary, and I am here to help you figure out how to get FreeShow scriptures and lyrics out to your ATEM Mini Pro so that you can see stuff like this on your live stream. So let's get started. It's going to be multiple steps to this, so stick with me as we go through this. I've got an ATEM plugged up, I've got 2 cameras set up, and I've got my ATEM connected to my computer, and so we're going to try to navigate this in a way that makes sense for you to see. And let's talk about what we need in order to get started. So you're going to need a computer. You're going to need an ATEM Mini Pro. So I've got a Pro ISO. That won't make any difference as long as it has a chroma key option on it. So I believe they all have that. So forgive me if I'm wrong, but they should all have that. You're going to need, or I recommend at least having at least 1 or 2 camera angles or cameras, and then being able to connect your computer to your ATEM 2 different ways. You need to connect it with USB-C and with an HDMI output to where it's a separate monitor or screen. All right. So we connect the ATEM to the computer with those 2 things. Okay. And then we're going to look at what we need to change in our computer to make this work. So we're going to go to our computer settings. I'm going to share my screen with you. And in our computer settings, you will go to your displays for one, and I've got mine as a Blackmagic display. So if I got it arranged, you'll see I've got, this is my YOLO box, so don't worry about that. That's like my separate monitor to see and record all this stuff. And if you look over here, this is my Blackmagic HDMI, all right? So that's connected. The next thing you want to do is go to your wallpaper, and you want to change this from show on all spaces in your wallpaper settings to off so that you can select individual screens. And I've selected my Blackmagic Design HDMI, and I set the color to be green. All right. That's important because we're going to key out the green. All right. And so we've got that set up. That is your computer setup that you will need in terms of your computer settings. The next thing you want to do is we're going to set up our FreeShow. So let's look at what it takes for us to get this to work in FreeShow. All right, so we are now in FreeShow. And in FreeShow, what you're going to do is you're going to go to your, first you're going to set up a template. So you're going to go to your templates down here. And what you want to look for is something that's a lower thirds. If you've updated to the latest FreeShow setup, you're going to find that there is a the 1.3.6 update to FreeShow is available. So I would check that out. All right. And so you'll be able to have access to lower thirds. If you want to get different ones, like the ones I'm using today, you can go to my website, garybjr.com, and you can download the free media toolkit for templates, and you can use them. And so what I've got here is a template that has lower third lyrics for songs, and I've also got one that's lower third lyrics for scriptures, and I've got them in a white box with black text. Then I've got a little orange drop down to show the actual reference of the scripture. Okay, so you've got to have a template created. Like I said, I would recommend just downloading them from my website if you have not already. And then if you want to, you can create your own as well. And you can make them be completely transparent. There's one here that's completely transparent. You could do something like that if you wanted to as well. But I like the ones with the box. It just keeps it simple and easy. So once you've got your template set up, the next thing you want to do is you want to go to create a style using those templates. So you want to go to your settings and select on the left side, styles. All right. When we get to the styles, let me make that bigger for you guys. When you get to the styles, you're going to be looking to create one. And I've got one called Stream Scripture. I've got one Stream No Scripture. But the main thing you want to do with your style is you can keep everything up here pretty much generic. I do go and change my transitions on most of mine. So if you go into mine and you see the between, I've got the between transition to off on my text. And then on the media, there's no between transition. So I don't like to see the between transition happen. So I turn that off to none. Okay. The next thing you want to focus on is override slide with a template. All right. And this is where you will put your lyrics lower thirds template. And then I got override scripture with a template. And this is where you'll put in your lower third scripture template that you've got, right? And so when you click on this, it'll give you an option for all the different lower thirds you've got. Make sure you label them properly and just select the one that you want, and then turn off the background from being active. So you can keep the slide active, you can keep the overlays active, but you want to disable your backgrounds. This is important because if you don't disable backgrounds, then your lower thirds will be there, but it's going to be the background with it. So you're not going to be able to see through and see the camera that you've got connected to your ATEM. All right. That's important. All right. So now we're going to go, after we set up our style, we're going to name that style. So you would click add and you would name this. So I'll just call this Stream Scripture 2. And it starts out blank like that. Go to your transition. Text transitions, hit enable more and say between, and we're going to turn it to none. All right. And that just keeps it from looking like it's blinking real weird. For your override slide with template, I've got, this is like your lyrics and things like that, or any pre-made slides. So I got lower lyrics back box. And then we've got override scripture with template. I've got a lower thirds scripture with a box. Okay, so you can do that one. And I think I've got one that's a lower third, just lyrics. I'll just do the LT lyrics. All right. So keeping it simple there, and then we want to disable background. Now that's done. And I called it Stream Scripture 2, okay, because I already had one that's similar to that. And if I go back and forth, you'll see that they are pretty much the same. Okay, this has just got one that's got the lyrics with the logo. And you can have your logo set up in those templates that you can download from my site. So next thing you're going to do is go to your outputs. All right. And so we're going to set up our output. And our output's going to be designed to have, we can have a main output like I've got here. I just called it, it's called primary. And then you're going to have another output, and I call mine's stream. Okay. And so I've got a stream set up here. If you were going to create one, you would just hit this add button at the bottom, and then it's going to ask you, do you want it to be a normal or a stage? You're going to say normal, and then you would pick which slide or which screen you want to connect. And my Blackmagic design is screen number 2. All right. And then it's going to ask you, what style do you want to use for this one? All right. And so we're going to select here, and we're going to call this one Stream Scripture 2. All right. And then it's called output 1. So you'll see it here is output 1. And then we've got the screen selected. It's always on top, but we've got to enable NDI. And we're going to select the option that says transparent. And that makes it go invisible, as you can see there. And I'm going to disable this one, the one that I was previously using. So I'm going to turn that off. And we're going to go back to output 1. This is our new stream. It's set to Stream Scripture 2 for the style. We've got it. We picked our screen. You want to always select always on top for this, because if you don't, remember, we're going to be streaming a computer screen. We're going to be making that be our green screen, so to say. Okay, so the computer screen is going to be our green screen because we made the wallpaper of the computer green. If you don't say always on top, you're going to see your menu bar at the top be blank when you're using your stream key setup when we get to the ATEM. All right, so always on top is important. And then you have to activate NDI, and then you want to select transparent. All right, that's the most important steps here. So we got output 1, and then we can go to our show, and we want to go ahead and send those outputs. And so I'm going to turn this off right now. It was previously on, and then we're going to select one of those, and you notice it pops up down there, and then you would send it over by hitting this present button, or this arrow up here, this send, I call it the send output, but it's the present button. And when you click that, it gives you a pop-up. All right, it sends that out to your actual screen, the green screen that we created for the ATEM Mini, the Blackmagic Design HDMI. So we've gotten our computer set up, we've got our FreeShow set up. The next thing you need to do is set up your ATEM. And there's 2 different ATEM programs you got to go to. One is called the ATEM Setup. The other one is called the ATEM Software. You want to open up both of those. And so what I'm going to do is go back to my computer so you can see what I'm doing here. We're going to go to the ATEM Setup first. All right, so this is my ATEM Mini Pro ISO, as you can see here. And we're going to click this little connection button. It looks like a little port or cord or cable ending, I guess, like an Ethernet port or something like that. And I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to scroll down to the very bottom, and it's got the panel settings. This is what I'm most concerned about. You don't need to make any changes here based on what you've already got your ATEM set up for. But on the panel settings, you want to select whichever way you want to switch. You don't have to mess, that doesn't have to change for this particular setup. But picture in picture, I got mine set to stay on with the transition. So every time I transition, my picture in picture will stay on, even if I switch to a new camera. That's totally up to you. But this next one, the chroma key, or this one's most important, all right? So the chroma key is where we're going to set up that green screen to go away. So we need to make sure we make it to where it stays on with the transitions, because if you have two cameras like I've got set up here, you'll be able to switch between those two cameras, right? You'll switch between camera 1 and camera 2, but your lower thirds will remain there consistently. And you want to have this on, stay on with transition. And then you simply save that, and we're done with the ATEM setup. The next step we're going to do is we're going to go to the ATEM software, all right? And so if I go over to my ATEM software, let me pull this up, and I'll make this bigger for you guys. It doesn't really change the panel size. Let's see. I can't make that panel any bigger. All right, so this is what you've got here. This is your ATEM software setup. This is the only page you need to be on for this setup. Now, keep in mind, if you use this setup for chroma keying, you will not be able to use the picture-in-picture option, because it lets you do key or picture-in-picture. It does not let you do both, okay? So we've got the palettes option on the right, on the upper right. That's the one you want to click on. And we're going to scroll down to where we get to this upstream key 1, and we select chroma, all right? And then you want to pick your field source. Basically, you want to pick the screen that's green. That's what it says your field source. I don't speak Black Magic or ATEM mini language, so I just call that pick the screen that's green that you have selected. So the one that's connected from your computer to your ATEM. So you've got 1, 2, 3, or 4 to pick from. Whichever one of those it is, I've got mine plugged into HDMI 3. And so I've got camera 1, camera 2 as cameras. And then my input number 3 is my computer. And that's the one that's got the green screen that I set up as the wallpaper. So you pick that. And then it's giving you an option to pick a chroma sample. That chroma sample option is just saying, okay, well, where do you want this screen to pick? Where do you want it to pick from on the screen? You can pick anywhere, because the whole screen should be green. And you can make that be bigger or smaller by sliding this up or down to pick a bigger sample. It doesn't matter much because we made our whole wallpaper completely green. So anywhere that you pick on here is going to be fine. That's more if you had like a green screen sheet or curtain or whatnot, and you want to pick a certain part of the curtain that has the right type of lighting and things like that. For us, this is a digital green, so it's completely consistent. So you don't have to worry about that. Now that we've got that done, we've got it set up. You don't have to have that light on for chroma keying or anything like that. And then we go down here, and I had to turn my background up to 57%. You may or may not have to do that. I'm not sure. It was set to 50%, which was fine. But now let's look and see what we've got. So we've got all of our settings made. So we got our palettes, we got our upstream key, and that's the one that's connected to the computer. We got it set to the actual source. So when you click that, it gives you some options. I picked camera 3 because input number 3 is what I've got my computer on. And now your ATEM software is set up. However, if you use your ATEM software to control your ATEM, then you would stay here, okay? If you don't, you would go to your ATEM and you would actually turn chroma keying on, okay? If you notice, you can see on the bottom of the screen here, you see that it pops up. On my ATEM, if I turn it off, it goes away. If I turn it on, it goes on. And then I can switch between cameras 1 and 2, back and forth, and that chroma key or that lower thirds stays there, okay? This is my camera off to the side, and then I've got the other cameras. Camera 1 is my main angle here. And so basically what you've got is this might be your close-up shot of the worship leader, and then this might be your wide angle of the entire service in the back. But the whole time, your scriptures or your lyrics are showing up at the bottom the whole time, all right? And so if I go back into my program here, let's see, if I go to a song, okay? When I click on that particular song, you'll see that the switcher has switched to where my output that I selected for, or the template that I selected for lyrics is just a lower thirds with a white box. And that's what shows up when I go to my lyrics because I have it set up to do that. When I go to the scriptures, it switches to look like that, to where you can actually see the actual, let's see on this side, you can see the verse reference or the scripture reference in orange down there. So it's Joshua chapter 1, verse 1. All right. In FreeShow, I can arrow to the right and I can go to the next verse, the next verse, and the next verse, and you'll see that continuing to change. And the whole time, you could be going from verse to verse and switching from one camera to the next, and it'll continue to change. All right, going back and forth, and there's no problem because you've got it keyed out to where no green is showing up. You got it set up to where you can switch back and forth between your two cameras in this case, and you've got your third input on your ATEM switcher as your screen. This FreeShow is sending a signal or your screen to. All right, and so that is how you would use FreeShow to send lower thirds or, you know, slides or whatnot into your ATEM switcher. If you want to create slides that you want to show full screen and not be lower thirds, this is where you would need to use actions. All right. And so right now I've got the lower thirds on and active, but let's say you want to show some full size slides on your presentation. You won't be able to settle for just this setup. You have to make those particular slides show up full screen, no matter what your green screen is set to on the ATEM, no matter what your chroma key is set to on the ATEM. And so let's talk about how we would do that. All right. So I'm gonna go back to FreeShow, and you'll see here, I've got a slide here. That's the lyrics, but I've got this here is an upcoming, like an announcement slide, let's say. Okay. And I've got a whole few of them. These are just templates. So they all say the same thing, which is a couple words changed. So don't worry about that part. But let's say you got these and I got them set up on a timer already, did all that. But today we're going to focus on how to make this work with actions to make these be full screen, even though we have lower thirds set up. So the first thing you want to do is I've got my announcement slides. That's what we're on right here. All right. And so if I keep the green screen on, they look like that. I don't want them to look like that. So I need to change the output style to where it'll look like this one on the live stream as well through the ATEM. So I'm going to go down to functions, and this is where you'll find your actions. Let me click that, and you're going to go to your actions over here. And we're going to go to new action, and we're going to change that output style. So I'm going to call this announcements. Announcements live stream. All right, I will say announcements on live stream. And the start action is going to be to change the style. So we're going to go here and we're going to scroll down to the bottom. There's a lot of different things you can change. We want the action to change the output style. All right. Earlier we set up the output style to be a lower thirds, but when we're doing our announcements, we need to be full screen. So we're going to say active outputs is an option. You can say all outputs, or you can just say specific outputs. So I'm going to go to specific outputs in this case, and I've got the one that we created called output 1. When I click on that, I'm going to make that for announcements go to default. All right, and then we'll close that, and we've got our announcements on live stream here. Okay, when I click that, it automatically adjusts here. So I'm going to actually put that, and I'm going to drag that action right onto this first slide. Okay. So we've got a way to change our output now to where it will automatically change to be the full screen. Okay. Now what happens is that actually changes on our ATEM. So if I turn the chroma keying off, you'll see here that it covered up everything that was showing. So before we had the green screen and everything was transparent. Now my slides are showing up over it when I have the chroma key on. When I turn the chroma key off or the key off on my ATEM, then it goes away because I still have two cameras up under here. When I hit chroma key on, it covers them completely up, which is what we didn't want to do earlier because we had lower thirds. But for a full screen slide, this is perfect because you do want that to show up, let's say for opening slides and maybe your closing slides or something like that to end your service. You can do something like this, but these are at the beginning. All right, so let's go back into our ATEM And let's figure out how to make it to where when we get to our lyrics, when it's time for worship, it doesn't look like this, right? We don't want it to transition and be full screen. We want to actually be able to see behind it, okay? So let's go back into FreeShow, and we're going to make another action that we're going to apply to this first slide to say, go back to the output style for lower thirds. So we're going to go down to functions. We're going to go to new action. We're going to call this one lower thirds live stream. And you can name them whatever you want. I'm just doing that so I can easily identify, which is what you want to do as well. And so we're going to make the start action for this be the same thing. It's going to be an action of changing the style. So we're going to scroll down till we see change output style. Change output style here. And then it says active outputs, and you can click that, and we want to say specific outputs because we just want to change the one that's going to our live stream. And we're going to select this one, and we're going to go to our stream scripture 2 that we created. That's the one that shows the lower thirds. So then we close that out. And so now I'm going to drag that. Let's go here first. Well, I'm going to go to the slides here. Okay, we'll activate that one. I'm going to click on this show. It's not active right now. That's the purple one. And I'm going to say lower thirds live stream is one we just created. I'm going to drag that onto here. Okay, onto this first slide. So when I come out of my slides here, okay, and these are on a loop, so they're going to just keep going until I go out and I go into the first song for praise and worship section here. And I click on Tasha Cobb's praise and worship and click on the first slide. Watch what happens. It automatically goes to the lower thirds so that those lyrics are showing up at the bottom, even though we previously had our announcement slides going on. When we get to the first slide of lyrics, we've got it set up to make that action switch to the lower thirds live stream output that we created. And so now everything that shows up is going to be lower thirds, every slide after that, okay? And then we can go, let me go back to FreeShow so you can see it. When we get through all of this, we got these other lyrics here. Those all show up in lower thirds. Now on the right is our primary. This is going to the audience in-house. They're seeing all this nice colorful background. The audience on the live stream is going to see a camera with the lower thirds feed of the lyrics. So they're going to see the worship team here. That's me. I'm the worship team singing with a microphone. That's what's going to show up on your live stream. But if we go to FreeShow, I've got some closing announcement slides, right? So I made some closing announcement slides just like I had as the opening, and I need to do the same thing. All right. So right here we've got, let's see, I'm going to remove this one because we're going to add our own. So we're going to add announcements on live stream back to the first slide here so that when we get done with our scriptures, because I got the scriptures going on, those are down there so I can see my scriptures showing up. I can switch the camera angle. The pastor's teaching and they're talking about Joshua. I'm going back and forth through different angles and I'm switching the scriptures left and right or just progressing through verse by verse. And then I've got some scriptures in Romans, get to that. And then when I get to the announcement slides, okay, when those show up, this is what happens. It goes away and it shows up for the slides because I added the action to go back to announcement slides. All right. And so this is important when we talk about how this works. We need to make sure that if we're going to use the ATEM with FreeShow, we're not going to always have everything in lower thirds designed that way. We're going to have some slides that are going to have information on there that we want to show the whole graphic, the whole picture. Some of you all are designing your announcements to look really cool and have images and photos and all that stuff. You don't want that to be reduced to a lower third. You want that to show the full screen. You have to add that action into that particular show so that it'll show the entire screen of your show. And that's the main thing I want you to take away. This is a little bit of an advanced feature. So when you're talking about connecting your ATEM to FreeShow, understand that it's going to come with this dilemma that if you turn on chroma key while you got a full screen showing, this is what you're going to get. So if you turn it on and you don't have that lower third set up like this, if we go here, we got that set up there, but it's not showing up properly until I go to there. All right. And that's the one I actually have that particular slide set up to have on FreeShow. It has the action tied to it. And you'll see the little action right here to where if you hover over that, it says, okay, we can remove it if you want to, but you want to keep that on so it'll stay on and it'll work to where your live stream will always show up properly with lyrics at the bottom, scriptures at the bottom, but big announcements, custom slides with pictures and things like that, those will be able to convert to be full screen. And you got to create some actions to do that. So hopefully this helps you understand how to better use your ATEM Mini with FreeShow.